The millionaire's daughter was always sick, until the poor nanny did something impossible. 6 o'clock in the morning on a gloomy Monday in the middle of a New York winter. Clara Bennett pulled her thin coat tighter around her as she stepped off the subway. Her hands trembled slightly, not just from the cold. Today was her first day at a new job as the nanny for the only daughter of James Whitmore, one of the most powerful tech CEOs in the country. She stood before a grand white mansion in the heart of the Upper East Side. 5 stories, black wrought iron gates, and hedges trimmed like something out of a storybook. Clara took a deep breath. At 24, coming from a shared flat in Brooklyn, with her tied-back brown hair, worn-out shoes, and frayed canvas bag, she suddenly felt like she had stepped into a world that wasn't hers. She rang the bell. The gate opened, revealing a woman in her 50s, Mrs. Green, the longtime housekeeper, with a stern expression. "You must be Clara," she said, voice steady, eyes sharp. "Yes, I'm right on time." "Let's hope you've read the handbook we sent via email." Clara nodded. The rules echoed in her mind. No personal conversations with the child. No feeding outside of scheduled times. No leaving the child's room without permission. No unnecessary noise. "Lily is on the 3rd floor. Stick to the rules. Things will go smoothly if you stay within your boundaries." "I understand." Clara climbed the marble staircase. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, the hallways silent like a museum. She paused in front of a door decorated with butterflies and flowers, drawing in a deep breath. She didn't know it yet, but her life was about to change forever. Clara knocked softly on the 3rd floor door, her heart pounding in her chest. No response. She slowly turned the knob and stepped inside. Soft morning light filtered through lace curtains. The room was vast, decorated like a fairy tale. Pastel walls, stuffed animals lining the shelves, a tiny bookcase, and picture frames still empty. In the middle of the silence, a little girl sat on the rug, clutching a worn-out teddy bear. Curly blonde hair, pale skin, and large gray-blue eyes that had seen more sadness than any 2-year-old should have to carry. Clara quietly lowered herself to the floor, keeping a gentle distance. "Hi there, I'm Clara," she said, her voice soft, as if afraid to shatter the delicate stillness. The girl looked up. No smile, no words, just silence. "You're Lily, right?" A slight nod. Clara smiled, trying to stay calm, though her heart had just cracked a little. "Your teddy looks special. Does he have a name?" Lily held him closer. "His name is Max. Mommy gave it to him." Her voice was a whisper caught in the wind. "Your mommy gave him a name?" "Before she went away." "You mean she passed away?" Lily didn't answer. She just looked down and hugged Max tighter. "I lost my mom too," Clara said after a pause. Lily looked up. Her eyes were still heavy, but there was a flicker of curiosity. "And I once had a baby. But my baby went to heaven." It was the first time Clara had said those words out loud since it happened. Her chest tightened, but something in Lily's eyes gave her strength. "I know what it feels like to be alone." Lily slowly crawled a little closer, still holding Max. "The last nanny said that too, but she left." Clara gently extended her hand. "I'm not going anywhere." Lily stared at it for a moment. Then, shyly, she placed her tiny hand into Clara's. "Promise?" "I promise." In that quiet moment, something unbreakable began. The first days passed slowly but gently. Clara spent most of her time on the 3rd floor with Lily. She didn't just care for her, she tried to bring something this enormous mansion had been missing for years: the laughter of a child. In the mornings, Clara taught Lily lullabies her own mother used to sing. Her soft, clear voice filled the air with warmth. At first, Lily only listened. Then, one day, she quietly began to hum along. Her tiny voice trembled, but her lips curved into the faintest smile. "You did it, Lily!" Clara cheered, clapping her hands. Lily giggled, a pure crystal sound that echoed through the room. For the first time in a long while, laughter returned to the Whitmore mansion. At lunchtime, Clara turned meals into games. "So, Your Royal Highness, which magic dish would you like today? Singing potatoes or dancing carrots?" Lily burst out laughing, choosing the singing potatoes. Clara immediately gave them a silly voice and sang. Both of them laughed until they cried. Clara also taught Lily to say thank you, to eat by herself, to greet the morning with a smile. Little things, yet to Lily they were tiny miracles. At night, Clara read bedtime stories, not fairy tales about castles and princes, but stories about kindness and hope. Each time the ending came, Lily would smile and rest her head on Clara's shoulder. One night, as Clara tucked her in, the little girl whispered sleepily, "Good night, Mommy Clara." Clara froze. Her heart trembled, not from shock, but because that one small sentence held all the love and longing a 2-year-old could feel. She brushed a strand of hair from Lily's face and whispered, "Good night, my little angel. Mommy's right here." Lily drifted to sleep, her face peaceful, the shadows gone. From that moment, Clara knew she wasn't just a nanny anymore. She had become the person Lily trusted most, and perhaps the one she herself needed to heal her own broken heart. It was already dark when James Whitmore returned home. He had just left the office after a long day of board meetings and investor calls. His expensive suit was still sharp, but his eyes gave him away, tired, worn, and distant. Sometimes even James didn't know why he kept holding on to the billion-dollar company, the reputation, the control, while slowly losing the most important thing, a connection with his daughter. He stepped through the front door of the mansion, expecting silence. No giggles, no warmth, just another evening alone. But tonight, something was different. From upstairs he heard laughter, soft, childlike laughter, mixed with the soothing voice of a woman reading a story. He paused, surprised. Lily was laughing. When was the last time he heard that? Curious, he made his way up the stairs. He stopped at the doorway, careful not to interrupt the moment. Clara was seated on a chair, Lily leaning against her, eyes wide with wonder, as Clara read a story about a princess who saved her mother with love. James gently knocked on the doorframe. "Papa!" Lily exclaimed, rushing toward him. She wrapped her tiny arms around his leg, hugging him with a kind of trust he hadn't felt in ages. He bent down to pick her up, a bit awkward, a bit unsure, but for the first time in a long while, it felt real. "What were you doing?" "Miss Clara was telling a story. She can sing, too, like an angel." James smiled slightly and glanced at Clara. "Thank you for taking care of her," he said, still in his formal, businesslike tone. "It's my pleasure, sir," Clara replied, maintaining respectful distance. Silence passed between them, not uncomfortable, but not warm either. "I'm not very good at being a dad," James said suddenly, as if confessing a secret. Clara looked at him, hesitated, then nodded gently. "No one's good at it from the start. We all learn." James said nothing. That simple sentence struck him more deeply than expected. "I'll try to have dinner with her tomorrow," he said quietly, then turned to leave. Clara watched as he disappeared down the stairs. There was something in him, not entirely frozen. Maybe, deep down, there was still a heart trying to find its way back. In the days that followed, James began spending more time at home. He was no longer just the busy father who made brief appearances each night. He started sitting down for dinner with Lily, listening to her little stories, even smiling now and then as he watched her and Clara play Princess and the King. Clara didn't speak much. She kept her role and her distance. But the warmth she brought could not be hidden. Lily glowed with happiness and health, and every time she whispered "Mommy Clara," James's heart skipped a beat. And then Margaret arrived. One quiet weekend morning, she returned to the mansion, with suspicion in her eyes, ice in her tone, and judgment etched in every glance. That morning, the air inside the Whitmore mansion felt colder than usual, even with sunlight pouring through the grand living room windows. Clara was painting with Lily, the little girl happily describing the kingdom of Daddy and Mommy Clara, where Princess Lily could fly with her purple cape when the sharp, deliberate click of heels echoed from the marble hallway. Clara had never met Lily's grandmother, but when Margaret Whitmore walked in, she didn't need anyone to tell her who it was. The woman, around 60, stood tall in a cream-colored dress, pearls around her neck, her gaze as icy as winter frost. She didn't smile. She didn't greet Lily. She didn't ask why her granddaughter was glowing with joy. She simply looked at Clara, then scanned the room like she was inspecting the cleanliness of a hotel suite. "You must be Clara," she said, her tone as neutral as a verdict. "Yes, I'm Lily's nanny," Clara answered, trying to stay calm. "Nanny." Margaret repeated the word like it was something unpleasant left on the fine china. Lily, still on the floor, proudly held up her newest drawing. "Grandma, I made a picture. It's our house, with Daddy, me, and Mommy Clara." Clara froze. Margaret did too, only for half a second, before her lips pressed into a thin, tight line. No one spoke, but Clara felt it. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. When Lily went up for her nap, Margaret remained in the parlor with Clara. She didn't look her in the eye. "You seem very close to my granddaughter," she said calmly, like a judge. "I only want Lily to feel safe," Clara answered, gently but firmly. "Safe or attached." Margaret's voice softened, but her words cut. "I've seen many girls like you. Young, polite, obedient, and then, after a few months, they start acting like family." "I have no intention of overstepping my role," Clara said quietly, but didn't look away. Margaret said nothing. She adjusted her coat, stood, and said with a cool finality, "We'll see." 3 days later, she called a private investigator. "Her name is Clara Bennett. I want everything: schooling, work history, relationships, habits. Dig deep. No one's that clean." Meanwhile, Clara continued to care for Lily with quiet devotion. The little girl laughed more, ate well, slept peacefully. Her drawings now featured 3 familiar figures: Daddy, Lily, and Mommy Clara. When the report arrived, Margaret tore it open with frustration. Clara had studied nursing, volunteered at a children's hospital, lived simply, had no debt, no criminal record, no questionable relationships. Too clean, too dangerous. "There's no way," she muttered. "Keep looking. Everyone hides something. So does she." That night, as Clara tucked Lily into bed, the little girl murmured, "Miss Clara, why doesn't Grandma like you?" Clara paused. "Why do you think that?" Lily pouted. "She looks at you like burned toast." Clara let out a soft laugh, kissed her forehead, but inside she felt the sting. Even a 2-year-old could sense that contempt. Meanwhile, downstairs, Margaret stepped into James's study. "Have you noticed she calls the nanny Mommy Clara now?" James looked up, tired. "She needs love. Clara gives her that." Margaret scoffed. "She's the help, not her mother." James didn't argue. He just said quietly, "Don't make Lily grow up emotionally starved just because you dislike her." Margaret said nothing, but her eyes said enough. This wasn't over. It was just the beginning. That night, in a dimly lit study filled with silence, Margaret sat alone at her desk. Clara's file lay before her, too neat, too perfect. She tapped her silver pen against the polished wood, eyes dark and calculating. A plan was already taking shape, not loud, not rushed, but deliberate, precise, enough to ruin Clara without leaving a trace. Margaret kept watching. Clara could feel it. The glances that lingered just a second too long, the gardener's oddly timed questions, the near-silent footsteps echoing through the hallway at night. They all whispered the same warning. Someone was waiting for her to make a mistake. But amid that quiet tension, something else began to grow. Slowly, without sound. A feeling that neither Clara nor James could name. They began talking more. At first, only about Lily's meals or routines. But then, it became about things that had nothing to do with work at all. One late night, Clara was making tea in the kitchen when James walked in. No suit, no polished shoes, just a man in a sweater, eyes distant and tired. "Still awake?" "I have trouble sleeping." "So do I." A quiet laugh shared between them. James sat down, staring into the dark window. "I used to think I was strong until my wife died giving birth to Lily. I don't know how long I've been walking around like a shell." Clara paused. She set the teacup down, her fingers trembling slightly. "I had a baby once, but he didn't make it, and I thought I stopped feeling anything after that." The silence between them stretched, not heavy, but still, like an embrace made of understanding. They didn't speak more that night, but when James looked at Clara, something had shifted. It wasn't the look of a boss anymore. It was something softer, something real. In the days that followed, they never brought up that moment, but the space between them shrank little by little. James started coming home earlier. He listened more, played with Lily, and each time he saw Clara laugh with his daughter, something inside him skipped, a feeling he thought he had lost. One afternoon, Lily was curled in James's lap when Clara walked in with a plate of cookies. The little girl looked at them both, tilted her head, and asked, "If Daddy marries Miss Clara, does that mean I'll have a mommy?" No one answered for a few seconds. James looked at Clara. She looked back, for the first time, not looking away. Lily didn't know it, but her innocent question had spoken aloud what both adults had been silently hiding all along. After Lily's innocent question, the air in the house grew still. James didn't answer. Clara didn't either. But from that moment on, something shifted, fragile and quiet, like a door barely ajar. In the days that followed, everything seemed strangely calm. Lily kept smiling, James remained present, and Clara stayed as gentle as ever. Only Margaret grew quieter, more discreet, and more dangerous. No one noticed that just as happiness seemed to bloom, a storm had already begun, forming silently behind the mansion's marble walls. The rain came early that afternoon, heavy, dark. No one knew that a plan had already been set in motion, and Clara, the one who brought light into the mansion, was about to become the sacrificial piece. Margaret entered Lily's room with a red velvet box in her hand. Inside was one of her most valuable heirlooms, a deep green emerald necklace passed down through 3 generations. She opened Lily's small wardrobe, tucked the box among the stuffed animals, and closed the door. The entire process took less than 3 minutes, quiet, calculated, flawless. By early evening, the alarm was raised. "My necklace is missing," Margaret declared. Chaos followed. The housekeeper, staff, even security were called in. It didn't take long before the red box was found, tucked between 2 plush toys in Lily's drawer. The same drawer Clara had been organizing all week. All eyes turned to her. Clara froze. She hadn't touched that drawer in days, but she knew in that instant, with her background, no family, no status, she was the easiest one to suspect. "You've been the only one in and out of Lily's room regularly this week," Margaret said calmly, but with ice in every word. No one else had the access or the motive. James stood silently. Clara turned to him, her voice shaking. "You think I did this?" she asked, barely above a whisper. James didn't answer right away, his face twisted with conflict. On one side, the mother he'd trusted all his life. On the other, the woman who had brought his daughter back to life. "Clara," he said, his voice trembling, "I want to believe you. God, I do. But right now, I need to hear it from you." She looked straight into his eyes, tears brimming. "If you have to ask, then it doesn't matter what I say." Silence dropped like a curtain over the room. No one spoke. That night, Clara packed her things. No one stopped her. No one offered help. Lily screamed from the hallway when she saw Clara coming down the stairs with her suitcase. "Mommy, Clara, please don't go. I'll be good, I promise. Don't leave me." Clara knelt down, holding her tightly through her tears. "I'm so sorry, Lily. I love you so much. But there are places I can't stay." Outside, the rain poured harder. As Clara walked through the iron gate, she didn't look back. But the storm inside her chest was far louder than the one falling from the sky. 2 days after Clara left, the nightmare began. Lily developed a fever that morning. At first, it was just fatigue and a soft cough, but by afternoon, her temperature had skyrocketed. Her body trembled, lips pale, eyes unfocused. James called the doctor immediately. After nearly an hour of tests and checks, the old physician frowned deeply. "Lily has a severe respiratory infection. If there's no positive change within the next 48 hours, we can't guarantee anything." James stood frozen. But she was fine just a few days ago. A child's body can collapse quickly if they're emotionally overwhelmed. "Has something traumatic happened recently?" James didn't answer. But the doctor's gaze said it all. The room was missing Clara. That night, Lily drifted in and out of fevered dreams. Every time James held her hand, she whimpered, "Mommy, Clara, don't go. Mommy, please don't leave." It tore James apart. He stayed by her bedside, unable to move, haunted by Clara's eyes as she walked away. There was no anger in them, only deep hurt and a love betrayed. He had doubted the one person his daughter trusted completely, the one who brought light and warmth back into their lifeless home. And now, he was losing them both. The next morning, James shot out of bed and shouted for the housekeeper. "Find her! I don't care what it costs. I need to see Clara." The entire city became a search zone, from old cafes in Brooklyn to hospitals, shelters, former student dorms, anywhere Clara might have gone, James sent someone there. But there was nothing. By nightfall, Lily's fever hadn't dropped. Her body burned with heat, unmoved by new medications and IVs. James held her hand tighter, whispering, "I'm sorry. This is all my fault." Outside, the rain began to fall again. James sat still in the cold room, not as the CEO of a billion-dollar company, not as a man of power, just a helpless father, and a man who had lost the one woman he never had the courage to admit he loved. The night dragged on endlessly. James sat at Lily's bedside, his eyes hollow, his hand still holding her tiny palm, burning like a coal. The doctor's words echoed in his mind, cold, relentless. Every faint murmur of "Mommy, Clara" from Lily felt like a knife in his chest. And only then did James fully understand. It wasn't the medicine or the machines. Clara was the only one who could save his daughter. And just when all hope seemed lost, the lights at the mansion's front gate flickered on, cutting through the rain-soaked night. Clara sat alone in a small rented room on the city's edge, where dim yellow lights and the sound of rain tapping the window were her only companions. She hadn't slept in 2 days. In her mind, Lily was everywhere. Those bright eyes, the little arms wrapped around her, the soft voice calling, "Mommy, Clara." She had walked away, thinking it was the right thing to do. But every wind chime brushing against the window, every restless dream pulled her back to that final moment. Lily's cries, James's silent gaze, and a pain too deep to name. Then, just as she tried convincing herself to let go, a message from the former housekeeper shattered everything she'd built to protect her heart. "Lily is critical. She keeps calling your name." No time to pack, no umbrella, just a thin coat and a racing heart. Clara ran out into the storm. She didn't know if she would arrive in time. She didn't know if she'd be allowed in or turned away again. But one thing she knew for certain: she had to go back. When she arrived at the hospital, drenched and shivering, only one thing burned inside her: to see Lily. At the front desk, she didn't think. She simply said, "My name is Clara Bennett. I'm the only one Lily needs." The nurse hesitated, but Clara's eyes, exhausted, honest, desperate, spoke louder than any words. After a long pause, the nurse nodded. The door creaked open slowly. James turned and froze. Rain still clung to Clara's hair, her coat soaked through, her eyes wild with fear and love. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. She was there. That was enough. Lily lay motionless, her skin pale, one small hand slipping off the bed's edge. Clara knelt beside her, took that tiny hand, and whispered, "Mommy's here, Lily." At that moment, Lily's fingers twitched, her eyelids fluttered. A faint breath escaped her lips. Then came the softest whisper, "You came back." The monitor beeped, slower, steadier. Vital signs began to rise. The fever eased. The doctors rushed in, stunned by the sudden turnaround. Clara stayed with Lily all night. She wiped her forehead, sang lullabies, and held her hand like she was breathing life into her. The cold, sterile hospital room felt suddenly warm, alive. No medicine had worked like her return. James sat frozen on the chair beside the hospital bed, watching Clara hold his daughter's hand, gentle, steady, as if nothing had ever come between them. Lily slept peacefully in her arms, breathing steadily, like a living miracle in a world that had long gone cold for him. All of it, the healing, the light in this once sterile room, didn't come from medicine. It didn't come from doctors. And it certainly didn't come from him. It came from the woman he had doubted, the one he had pushed away. James lowered his head, fists clenched, a sting burning behind his eyes. The guilt didn't roar. It crept in quietly, like waves lapping against rock. Steady, relentless. He had been wrong, not just for doubting Clara, but for staying silent while his mother acted, for lacking the courage to trust what his heart had known all along. These past few days he had walked through life like a ghost, hiding behind responsibility, avoiding emotion, only to lose the one person who made him feel alive again. Now, watching Clara softly brush Lily's hair, her gaze full of unspoken love, he knew. He couldn't stay silent any longer. James stood up and quietly walked out of the hospital room. He didn't say a word, didn't wait for anyone. He knew exactly what he had to do. His car raced through the dark, heading back to the Whitmore estate. He couldn't recall how many red lights he ran. His heart had only one rhythm now: truth. If Clara had the courage to come back and save his daughter, then this time he would be the one to stand and fight for her. No more hesitation, no more silence. Only one question echoed in his mind, again and again, like a warning bell. Who is the one that truly doesn't belong in Lily's life? Returning to the Whitmore mansion, everything seemed different now. The space was still elegant, quiet, meticulously designed, but to James, it had never felt colder. He walked straight into the study. No knocking, no announcement. Margaret was sitting by her usual peppermint tea, reading the paper. When she looked up and saw him, she didn't seem surprised. She simply folded the newspaper as if she had known this moment would come. James said nothing. He walked to the old safe behind the bookshelf, once belonging to his father, now under Margaret's control. The code was still the same, his grandfather's birth date. Margaret had never changed it. His fingers pressed each number steadily. The lock clicked open. A small red box sat quietly in the corner. The velvet box. James took it out. He didn't need to open it to know what was inside, but he did anyway, to confirm there was no room left for denial. The emerald necklace lay untouched, gleaming softly under the late afternoon sun peeking through the curtains. "You almost killed your granddaughter," he said. His voice was calm, too calm, not angry, not accusing, just heavy with quiet disappointment. Margaret didn't deny it. She sat still, silent for a long moment. Finally, she removed the wedding ring she had worn for decades and placed it on the table beside the box. "That girl, she changed you," she said softly, "and that frightened me." "No," James replied, eyes fixed on hers. "You weren't afraid of Clara. You were afraid of losing control. You couldn't accept that I might love someone you didn't choose." Margaret closed her eyes. A long silence followed. "You're right," she whispered, "and I was wrong." Nothing more needed to be said. But for James, that was enough. For the first time in his life, he no longer felt like a son seeking his mother's approval. He was a father, a man, and he knew what was right. That afternoon, Margaret went to the hospital. Not because James asked her to, not for appearance's sake. She went because she knew it was time to undo the damage she had caused. When she reached the hospital room, she saw Clara reading a story to Lily, the little girl's hand tucked safely inside hers. Margaret stood outside the door for a long moment. Then she stepped inside, not as a matriarch, not as someone in control, but simply as a person, eyes full of something she rarely showed: remorse. "I was wrong," she said hoarsely. "I'm sorry, Clara, and thank you for coming back." Clara didn't respond right away, but her eyes softened. Old wounds don't vanish overnight, but Clara knew how to forgive, not for others, but because her own heart deserved peace. A week later, Lily had made a full recovery. She was smiling again, eating well, chatting all day with boundless energy. The mansion seemed transformed too, no longer dark, no longer full of cold footsteps and closed doors. Every corner now echoed with laughter and warmth. That afternoon, the sun was soft and golden. A gentle breeze danced through the garden out back, where roses had just bloomed after the rain. Clara walked hand in hand with Lily, telling stories, both of them smiling. She didn't know that, at the end of the stone path, James was waiting with a small box in his hand. Lily was the first to notice. She squealed, "Daddy! Look, Mommy, it's Daddy!" and ran to him. James bent down and whispered something in her ear. Lily giggled mischievously, nodded, and ran back to Clara, tugging her hand. "Come on, Mommy, Daddy has something important to say." Clara blinked, confused, until she saw James kneeling in the middle of the garden. He didn't say much. He simply opened the velvet box, not the one once used to frame her, but one that held a ring, simple, elegant, like the love that had grown between them, quiet, steady, unshakable. "Clara Bennett," he said, voice warm and sure. "You've already been Lily's mother. You saved both our lives. Will you be my wife?" Clara laughed through tears. She didn't say yes right away. She stepped forward, took his hand, and whispered, "I've always been part of this family. It just took time for everyone to see it." Lily clapped her hands and jumped like the perfect little bridesmaid. James stood, wrapping both of them in his arms. No grand wedding, no diamond tiara or glowing chandeliers. Just love, real enough, deep enough, strong enough to keep the three of them together. The Whitmore mansion was no longer cold. no longer just a place of rules and tradition. It had become a home, a place filled with children's laughter, warm dinners, spontaneous hugs, and soft bedtime wishes. Clara, the woman once cast out, once doubted, once left standing alone in the rain, was now a mother, a wife, the heart of the household. She no longer needed to prove anything. Her love for Lily, for James, had spoken louder than any defense ever could. And Lily, the little girl who had once felt lost in her own home, was now growing stronger every day, in arms that would never let her go. A mother who never missed a bedtime story. A father who no longer hid his heart. In the end, family isn't born of blood or names written in legacy books. It's made by those who choose to love, fully, bravely, and with the unshakable belief that if love is real, it always finds its way back.